Hello everybody, it's Jen. Welcome back to another card making video. Today I'm using the new release Lawn Fawn stamp set called Oh Gnome, and it is absolutely adorable with these little gnomes and all their little accessories, and the sayings are just fabulous for really fun spring cards. I am so ready for winter to be over and for spring to get here. I'm going to start off with the coloring. For their skin tones, I'm using a 2-color blend. I want to give them a very pale skin tone, so I'm using E51 and E00, and of course bringing in the R20 for their blush on their cheeks, and then I'm just going to blend that out with the E00. I'm going to jump into the pink color combination. So as you saw from the picture, I'm using pinks, teals, and purples, and then the background in a green color and a light blue. So I'm coloring up our little female gnome here with R39, R85, and R83. Now these are really tiny images. You can get away with a 2-color blend if you want, but I do like the shading that a 3-color blend will give. So I just colored up her outfit. For her hat, I want it to look a little rounded, so I'm using the E39 very sparingly, but I want my shadows to be on either side of the hat. So I'm going to blend that in with my mid-tone, the R85, and then go back and blend the rest of that image with the R83, and that will just give it the appearance of her hat being rounded. I'm going to color the mushroom the same color as well, so I'm using the 3 colors throughout the images, the teal, the purple, and the pink. So instead of a typical red mushroom, I'm going to do the pink. Now the shadows for this mushroom will be under our little gnome, and those, as you saw in the stamp set, he comes separately, but I did mask him out and stamped him first. Then put my mask down and stamped the mushroom so it looks like he's sitting on it. I wanted there to be some shading on either side of the mushroom, and then I also put some shading underneath the little dots on the mushroom just so that they would stand out a little bit from the scene. So I'm going to color up the tulip here as well, and then one of the tiny little flowers. These are so tiny, but I did manage to squeeze in all 3 colors. As I said, I do like the look of the shading that the 3 colors give. So for aqua or teal, I'm going to be using BG13, BG11, and BG10. I'm going to color up this little gnome in the aqua color. Now hindsight, I sort of wish I would have traded the pants color with both of our little boy gnomes there. So for example, having his shirt in the teal and his pants in the purple, and then the other little guy I'm going to color purple and just kind of switch that out. I found this was a lot of the same color on the same image, but it worked out just fine. So I'm coloring his hat the same that I colored the little girl gnome. I'm going to use the aqua color for the flowers as well. Pretty simple, small images, so they don't take very long to color at all once you already have your markers out. I am going to go ahead and color up the mushroom here as well. So again, having the darkest shadows to the side just to make them look a little bit rounded. Give them some shape and definition, and then going under our little circles as well. So here's where I'm bringing in the purples. I'm using V09, V17, and V15 for the purple color. I'm using the V09 very sparingly. It's a very dark color, and I'll blend that in with the V17, which is my mid-tone, making sure there's a little bit of a highlight underneath his belt and under his adorable little beard and at the top of his arms, and then blending that out with the lightest color, which is the V15. Again, going to color up his hat the same way, just using that darkest color very sparingly to give us just a little bit of that shadow, and then coming in with the midtone and blending those out with our lightest color, leaving lots of highlight in the center of the images. Quickly again color up our little flower, and then I'm going to do this mushroom. So this mushroom here that I'm working on is the same mushroom that the little gnome is sitting on. So this is what it looks like when you don't mask out the gnome sitting on it. Thought it would be fun to carry that through, and here I picked up my wrong marker. So I picked up the V09 instead of the V17, so I had to blend that out. So this mushroom is going to be a little bit darker than the rest of them, but it wasn't a big enough of a mistake to start over now that I've gotten this far in the card. For the greenery, I'm going to be using G46, G43, and G40. So I'm going to color this plant here with those three colors. Again, just using the G46 very sparingly. I feel like I've said that already about 6 times in this video. Just enough to give that little bit of definition. So I'm going along the bottom parts of the stem and then the base of the leaves with that darkest color, blending that out with the G43. Making sure to leave room with for my highlight color. Now you can see there I'm really just touching the tip of my marker to the paper. This will allow the marker not to spread out, to give you a little bit more room to add those 3 colors, but you could definitely do the 2 color blend for those. I decided to do the wheelbarrow in the same green colors. I didn't want to bring in any other colors for the card. So I'm just doing my shading along either side of the wheelbarrow part just to make it look a bit rounded, and then of course underneath the top of the wheelbarrow as well. I didn't know what color I wanted to do that little top part, so I left it. I end up coming in with the G46 and the G43. I wanted it to be a little bit darker, so I just used the 2 colors. For the mushroom bases, I'm using E35, E53, and E51. This will give me a very nice light beigey tan color. And you can see again I'm adding the shadows to the sides and underneath the mushroom cap to give me a little bit of shading. I'm also going to color her hair with the same 3 markers here. So just adding the darkest underneath her hat and then where her little braids are. For the little shoes and the wheelbarrow wheel, I'm using some C markers. So I'm using C5, C3, and C1. I will go back in. I wasn't sure at this point what color I wanted to do their little belts, but I will do those with the C markers as well. For her apron, I want it to be white, so I'm just using C3, C1, and the C00, so leaving out the C5 for this. Making sure there's lots of white space there so that it looks white. I'm going to do the same for their little beards and mustaches, which I think are adorable. So I'm adding the C3, the darkest color, where there's little V's in their hair, or their facial hair, and then going in with the C1, and again just barely touching the tip of my marker to the paper so that I can have a lot of white space left over. I will come in with the C00 and blend that out just a little bit. So here's where I decide just to keep things the same. So I'm coming in with the C3 and the C1 for their belts, and then I'm going to do this speech bubble and the white dots on the mushrooms. I don't end up using the speech bubble, but I left this in so you could see how I colored it, just giving it a bit of shading. So for the background, I am using the landscape die by Lawn Fawn, and I'm going to be doing some Distress Oxide technique for this. So I grabbed my MFT cloud stencil here, and I'm using my makeup brush. I purchased these on Amazon. All the links to the products will be in the description box below. and I'm absolutely loving these brushes for a very soft blend. So I'm using the peacock feathers for the background. Now you can barely see this, but this was the look that I was going for. I just wanted it to be very subtle. I didn't want it to be too dark because I didn't want it to take away from the images on the scene itself. To finish this off, I'm just using a bit of ink and going over the entire panel there just to blend that out. Now I want to make sure that the top of my landscape die cut here matches that. So I am going to add some of the peacock feathers to the top part here. And I'm just sort of using whatever I had left on my laminated piece of cardstock so that I get that light blend. I cleaned my brush with a microfiber cloth, so I'm using the same brush here. I pulled out the Bundled Sage Distress Oxide ink. It matched that green color combination that I used with the Copics perfectly. And so I'm just blending this on now to my grass, or what will be the grass, the bottom part of this die cut. So I am going to go over this a couple times until I get a smooth blend and the color that I want to achieve. Once I get that done, I will go on to making the card. So I'm going to adhere this panel onto my card base, which is a standard A2 size card at 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. I just make these out of some 110-pound Recollection cardstock. So I'm not adding any dimension here at all. I am going to trim this up a little bit, and then I will add my cloud panel to the background, and I'm just going to lay that down flat with some liquid adhesive as well. So there's the card base and panel ready to go. Now I'm going to add in my elements here, my little images. I made sure not to put any of the adhesive close to where I knew I was going to be tucking the images in. Just used my little craft pick there to get that opening so I could put our little gnome on the mushroom down. So he's going to be at the back of the scene, and I'm going to add this little purple mushroom with some foam adhesive. So I do want some depth and dimension to this card. I thought it would be cute to add some of the flowers and the greenery behind my mushroom images, so I'm going to use the plant behind this little gnome, and then when I add the elements to the left hand side, I'm going to use the flowers. So when I was putting the card together, I wanted to make sure that I was evenly spacing out the various colors, so I didn't want 2 of the purple mushrooms together or 2 of the pink, and so on. So I'm just really kind of spreading them out based on color. So I'm adding the purple one here, and then I'm going to add this aqua one again on some fun foam or foam adhesive to give that some dimension. And here I'm going to add the little flowers behind them. I love the height that this gives to the elements here. It just kind of fills out the card really nicely. So for the center of my card, I'm going to use our little purple gnome, and he's going to be hanging out with the wheelbarrow, and then I'll have our little girl gnome to the other side of that. So I just want to make sure that I'm adhering these 2 pieces together, so I just used some liquid adhesive for that. Then I went ahead and popped that up on some foam adhesive. Just trying to figure out the placement. There goes Lila. The cats haven't made an appearance in a long time, but she scooted past the top of my craft mat there. So I realized I didn't need the foam adhesive on the wheel because that was going to be in front of the little girl gnome, so I had to take that off. I am going to add the flowers to the wheelbarrow, and I popped them up on some foam adhesive. I'm going to quickly add some foam to the back of our little girl here and figure out where I want her. Once I get her in place, I'm going to work on the sentiment. So I'm using the sentiment, "You're a friend like no other." I ended up cutting up this sentiment stamp quite a bit so I could arrange this in a fun little pattern down the middle of the card. I got my Versafine black Onyx ink there all over my platform, but I just used my stamp chamois to clean that up. So once I got the sentiment down, I felt like there was quite a bit of space between the sentiment, so I decided to add some of the hearts from the stamp set, and here I'm using the Seedless Preserves, but I thought it was too bright of a purple, so I'm just dulling that back with some dusty Concord, and then I'm going to stamp that down. And I do like the way that came out, and I thought it matched nicely with the purples that I chose. For the pink, I'm going to use the picked raspberry. Just trying to figure out, this little heart kept sticking to my fingers. You can see me having a fun old time trying to get this in position, and I'd get it and then it would stick to my finger again. But I finally did get it to work, and so I'm going to stamp that last one. And I really like the way that that filled out the sentiment. For some final detailing, I'm going to bring in my white gel pen and just add some highlights to the images. I really love the way that this just finishes off a card and really brings in some really nice highlights. So I'm going to add some to the mushrooms as well. I'm trying to make sure I don't get my fingers onto the white gel pen detail that I've already done. So just adding that to the plants, and that's the card for today. So I hope you enjoyed. Have a great day, everyone. I'll see you really soon. Take care. Bye.